Hi, I'm Ed Amoroso from Tag Cyber, and I'm here with Jay Smilyk, who is the CRO for Sepio Systems, very cool company that we're going to learn something about today. Jay, how you doing?
Fantastic. Thank you, Ed. Yourself?
Doing great. And I see you're sitting down in Maryland. It's good to see you back in the office. That's awesome to see.
Nice to be back. The weather is not cooperating the best, but nice to be back.
Well, listen, before we get into the tech discussion, give us a real thumbnail on what you guys do at Sepio.
Sounds good. Well, Sepio, I joined Sepio about 7 months ago, and Sepio is a hardware access control solution. We play at the layer one in the OSI stack and really look at giving you full visibility into all hardware assets, IT, OT, and IoT. And at the same time, trusting but validating that the tools that you have and the devices you have in your network are what they say they are. We work very closely with the other tools within your stack, whether it be your EDR, your NAC, your SOAR, to again kind of complete that cycle. As we've looked at for the years, companies have spent a lot of money on obviously software security, network security, but that hardware security, that layer one has kind of been that bucket that people have kind of steered away from, and it may be an acceptable risk in the past. And it's really where Sepio tends to play.
Have you found that customers come to you looking for like weird, rogue, kind of crazy stuff sitting on their network? Is that kind of a major use case for you guys?
Usually when we see that, it's unfortunately after the fact, right? Um,
Oh, well, then maybe
but
they could be hoping they don't have that problem.
exactly, yeah. So what we'll find sometimes, it all depends on the customer. Sometimes it's audit and compliance driven, right? So an audit will come in and say, listen, you have a NAC solution, you have this tool, that tool, but we really feel that on a threat landscape side, this is still a place that you should actually look at locking down. On a pen test, right? Once they get their pen test results, they actually start doing the forensics of how did that pen tester get in. And a lot of times what we've seen, it's been through that hardware layer. So they have validated, of course, that you've got the security youngin that we talked about in your EDR and phishing and your SIM and firewall rules, etc. But then when they really want to get in, a lot of times they'll come in through that hardware layer to start moving laterally from the network. So those are a lot of the drivers that we initially saw. Since we introduced Hack One at the end of last year, it really pivoted to that full visibility. And that's where we've kind of been very, very successful. Companies, first up, you can't protect what you can't see, right? So what do I own from IT, IoT, OT, throughout my whole network? And then I can make a better decision on how to protect the assets that I have. And it's really amazing as we've learned through companies that, not really having a command on everything that's there. And then it's how do you use that data, both from a network side and a security side. And every one of the use cases, every day we learn a different use case from a different vertical, a different company, and that makes it exciting.
Yeah, it seems like recently there've been a lot of hardware related problems, threats, and issues that we read about all the time, like both in OT and also IT. What are you guys seeing? Do you see kind of a preponderance of hardware related issues that seem to be popping up?
What we're seeing is obviously you have the legitimate uses for using these tools, right? Through a pen tester, whether it be through a Bash Bunny or Rubber Ducky or some of those tools. Then you see the piece where you have those kind of hybrid tools, right? So you have things like your Raspberry Pi, and a Raspberry Pi can be used for, from a controller and an AV system in an office room to a nefarious attack, a man-in-the-middle attack, right? That no tool that you have is going to see, right? Because it's going to spoof a MAC address, it's going to spoof the VID and PID of whatever that device it wants to spoof, and it'll go invisible. So we're seeing that piece of it. But then we definitely are starting to see, given some of the recent attacks out there, given some of the new requirements from the government, of concerns around supply chain, manipulated hardware during that supply chain, And the bad actor knows this, right? And I think that's what we're seeing is that the bad actor is, fortunately, we're in an industry that's constantly evolving, right? At the same time, our adversary is constantly evolving. And what we've noticed is that, the bad actor is running out of places to go, and there'll always be places they get in, but they're running out. As we talked about the software bucket, the network bucket, and that hardware layer is still a place that they know is, I call it the underbelly of the beast. And when I need a sniper and I really need to get in, this is what we're starting to see. So the high value assets, the high value companies, it's a higher and higher concern.
You mentioned supply chain. Let's dig in there a little bit. I want to get a feel for whether at least sort of discovering supply chain issues might be, and it's like, how here in the US, there's a lot of discussion around prohibiting some companies. Am I wrong to think maybe the types of techniques you're mentioning would be ways could you enforce some of those regs with this kind of technology? Is that possible?
Absolutely. So again, there's different layers, right, of identifying these tools that are out there. So let's take Section 889, for example. People that aren't familiar with Section 889, it's a new requirement through the U.S. government.
Controversial. Yeah, that's controversial stuff, right? Yeah.
Exactly, right. So, they've now picked a handful of vendors from Hickson and Dow and Huawei and some of the other, or ZTE, not Hickson, I'm sorry, ZTE, to not allow those within government facilities.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and
U.S. government.
Yeah. U.S. government facilities, right? So, so first off, what does that tell us about the industry? First off, the fact that the government's actually thinking forward, thinking, hey, this could be an easy way in, right? Yeah. So, and a little bit it's unfair because it's an easy target, right? Because obviously they're targeting products from China, but at the same time, what we're learning and what we've seen through our testing is we have just lots of devices from these companies here that they're not branded by Huawei or whatever. You can go to Amazon and purchase a camera and it never says this vendor on it. So by the way that we fingerprint it, at that electronic layer, right, at the physical layer of the device, we're able to actually ascertain what that device is and then have policy to block that device into the network. But it's interesting because it reminds me of GDPR in the early days is this isn't just 3-letter agencies. Imagine if you're a large real estate management company, right? And you have a lot of office buildings and shopping malls and strip malls, and you have Social Security offices, child welfare offices within those facilities. You're still responsible, right, because you manage the actual network within that building of being compliant for 889. So it is starting to push itself out to the enterprise too, along with obviously contractors and third party. I think compared to things like CMMC, it probably has a little bit more teeth. And I think given the SolarWinds attack and the fact that people are now starting to think about compromised supply chain, whether it be software or hardware, you're going to see a trend going through this way. But it is kind of, you're back to playing the whack-a-mole, right? It's very easy to pick 5 companies that I can, but more importantly, do I know what's on my network, and can I validate and verify that it truly is what it says it is? And it starts there.
Like sections like 889 are going to come and go, but I think what's interesting is what you had that little slogan a minute ago, and you said you can't secure what you don't see. That seems like the more foundational question. Like, can I identify things that are in my infrastructure? That never goes away. That's true today, 5 years from now. You know what I mean? Like with the sway of politics and all this crazy stuff. You don't want someone thinking, all right, I need to go buy this because of this one, law. It's much more general. So share with me, what are some reasons people would be deploying? Like, what are some of the primary use cases? I'm guessing maybe I'm wrong, but critical infrastructure, medical, hospitals, they must have pretty complex networks. And I'm guessing that the more complex the network, the more motivated you might be to try to figure out what you have. Am I reading that right?
Absolutely, Ed. I mean, listen, it all starts with, again, the more complex, right? Especially you talked about critical infrastructure. So,
Yeah.
remember that these companies, if you look at security, you look at IT and OT, even before there's something really called OT, right? Um, Look at a manufacturing company. Security wasn't necessarily the biggest concern, right? So if we looked at a classic manufacturing company, their security stack might not be as robust as we would have thought of a FinServ, company out there, because they kind of ran in segmented networks, and OT and IT weren't combined. And what we've seen now is that whether it be hospitals or whether it be manufacturing critical infrastructure, and then take that third party of access, right, into updates to software, updates to machinery, right? It's not a closed network anymore. It's open to your vendors, it's open to your users, it's open to manufacturers. So that landscape is just getting very, very large. And to, again, to not be cliche, to go back to first off understanding what's there, and then how do I trust but verify that that is what it says it is. So for example, if I take something, if I want to get in to a network, and I have a classic NAC solution, whoever it may be, and a NAC is a fantastic tool, but it's only designed to do what it's supposed to do, right? It's like expecting your car to fly. The car does a great job getting point A to point B with four wheels on the ground, and it does what it's supposed to do, but it's not designed to fly. On the NAC side, it is not going. If I have a Logitech keyboard, plugged in here, and I take a rubber ducky, a tool from Hack5, and I plug it in, and I actually spoof that MAC address. That NAC is still going to read that that is a Logitech keyboard. And to me, and to a lot of the companies now, this is the biggest concern. It's not only what I have on my network, but how do I validate that it is what it says it is? Because nothing is scarier than having something in plain sight that I think I trust, and at the same time it is sending data outside the network. And then the next piece is when we talk about critical infrastructure, having everything in one view, instead of having multiple products giving you asset inventories, et cetera, having everything in one view allows me not just to see what's on my network, but take an example. Let's say I have 100 CT cameras around in my campus, and I come in on Monday morning, and now I have 90. Why? What happened to the 10? Were they stolen? Are they down? They compromised? Or let's flip it around. Now I have 105. Okay, where did the 5 extra come from? I can have a policy that says those 5 cameras have to be on a certain VLAN. If they were actually connected, even if they're approved but were on a different VLAN, it's now breaking policy, and I can control the access of that device. So this is what we're starting to see, to be able to use that knowledge of visibility to make better security decisions. With that said, you mentioned the water hack. These are the types of things that I think are getting. My concern is that we have so many attacks that are coming out there. Do they just get lost 2 weeks from now? Do people forget? And I think this is where, but I think both with SolarWinds, now you have this hack. I think we're very close to jumping the chasm of understanding the true threat of this physical layer. I don't think people realize how big the physical layer is and how interconnected everything is. I think when you look at SolarWinds and you look at what actually happened there, and that the fact that the bad actor, nothing against SolarWinds, it could have been anyone. But if I'm attacking one to get to many, how else can I accomplish that same goal? Is it through a piece of hardware? Is it through some other device? Or is it through software? And I think it's woken everyone up.
Yeah, it strikes me as you talk through these discovery tasks that, and you probably will have a good answer to this. I would think there'd be just as much interest outside the security team, like with the engineers, the IT folks. So when you guys go on a sales call, is it usually with security people like me, or do you often find that you're talking to hardware engineers who may be interested in security, but perhaps more interested in just having a better way of monitoring their environment? What that must make for a harder sales call,
Um,
or maybe a better one because you
it
double the
makes for, I would
chances
say,
of a
I
yes.
would say it usually makes for a better one. It's funny. So unknowing exactly who the audience is going to be, I don't want to offend anyone, but us that have been doing this a long time know that there's been rubs in the past with certain companies between network and security, right? Go
Yeah.
back to the early firewall days,
You've
et
been
cetera.
at this a long time, Jay. You've been in some cool companies. So I know you know that, and I've lived
Yeah,
that.
well, the firewall's on my network, but you can't touch it because there's, yeah, okay, we got it.
Yeah.
So, but what we're doing is first off, we're empowering the security team to have insight to everything that's there without having to go to the network team. But actually, for one time, what we're actually seeing is that the security team is empowering the network team, right? So for us, first off, as we talked about earlier, we get more and more use cases every single time we speak to a large enterprise customer. The more people involved, as much as I want to jump into a POV tomorrow, those use cases increase because, and every company is different. We had a financial company the other day we were looking at, and as a byproduct of the HackOne solution, we're able to show you any vulnerabilities on your switches, a heat map, right? And some tools do that, but again, remember, everything has come into one spot, and we see this no matter what. With read-only access, with no traffic monitoring to the switch, we can give you this information. It's more of a to-do list. And we get so excited about the security side, we kind of, oh yeah, we can do this. And the network guy at this finance says, wait a minute, it takes me 6 weeks to get that data. And then when I get it, it's already outdated. And then I got to go back and, and this is just live data that goes through. It also, there's more people at the table now. As we talked about before, when you look at critical infrastructure, you look at IoT in hospitals, and you have things from your striker beds to your infusion pumps to your computers and everything that's there. And more people are sitting at the table. So the more that everyone's looking at the same data to make a better security decision, you're only going to have a better security posture. I think what we've seen in the past is people have worked in silos, and I think that a tool like HackOne allows everyone to look at the same data, and then they can use the other tools they purchased, right, to augment the solution, right? But again, you can't necessarily know what to do if you can't see it. And maybe that's a better firewall rule. Maybe that's a better NAC rule. Maybe that's changed in the way that a zero trust network or network segmentation, whatever it may be. You can then make that decision once you know what's actually there on a day-to-day basis.
Let's peek into the crystal ball here and make some predictions. Like going into the latter part of 21 into 22 and so on. Do you see more? I mean, I hate to make predictions about bad stuff, but you see more problems at that hardware level? Or I know you guys are working to try to avoid it, but do you think that there will be some more incidents that involve hardware devices?
Well, I kind of promised not to want to bring up the, obviously COVID-19 and the challenge that's through us, in the past and
We're in the middle of it, so
right.
It's our lives.
Let's look in the future, right? Eventually, even though it's not, we're going to have the new normal, people are going to be coming back to work. Things are going to be changing, and these devices, whether it be a corporate-owned asset, whether it be a personally owned asset, whatever it may be, a BYOD, are going to be coming back to the network. This is your number one challenge. How do I trust it, verify that those devices have not been compromised? Good, bad, and different. While we were gone, I needed a mouse. I normally go to my IT department. They didn't have it. I bought it from Amazon. I got it from Amazon. And that's what I've been using. Mm-hmm. How do you know?
Yeah.
And that's any device. I use a mouse example. So I think that's one. I just think the challenges coming back in are going to be that part of it. We've got to kind of get to a strong baseline. Then I think one of the other things too, and we've seen this just in the market, is the push obviously to zero trust, to network segmentation, things like this, because I think I think this is good for all of us, no matter who the company you're using is pushing this direction. But you hear people talk about Yossi Applebaum, our founder and CEO, and I were talking this morning. You hear him talk about 360-degree security, no matter what the product is, or 360, but it's not 360, right? Because unless you, and even if you do our layer, and the hardware layer, there's still gaps, right? But you want to get as close to that as you can. But if you do not pay attention to that hardware layer, even at zero trust, right? At the end of the day, there's still something connecting. And it's almost scarier, right? We can't give ourselves that false sense of security that I'm using a zero trust, and yet the device that's connecting, have I validated that it is what it says it is? Because now, again, this goes into that compromised supply chain, right? That's no different than the mouse sitting on my desk and it's sending data out, right? Or whether it be a man-in-the-middle attack or whatever it may be. So as I look at it in my future, look in the future, I do think that both on a regulation side and I just think on a device side, I think we're going to jump the chasm. I do think that hardware security piece of it has got to get stronger. You look at the attack at the water plant. You look at the challenges of medical devices, right? With FDA regulations, right? As a vendor, you don't necessarily want the responsibility of putting security on that device. As the hospital, you don't want to block or restrict that device if it's a life-saving device or whatever. So really your tool is visibility. And the better we have those visibility, and as we know, the number of devices are going to connect within the next 6, 12, 18, 24 months. It's just going to exponentially grow.
You explode. So, hey, for people who have some interest in Sepio, what is the website the best place to go?
It is absolutely. It's just www.sepio.systems. So it's not .com. It's Sepio, SEPIO.systems. But we also have a very active LinkedIn, and we do a lot with LinkedIn, and we have a Captain RDM, if you haven't followed them, Rogue Device Mitigation, but we try to.
And I've written with you guys quite a bit.
We try to make it fun, but we also try to share the best practices as we learn. We try to share those things out, not necessarily, vendor specific to Sepio, but just like you do, Ed, with Tag Cyber, of just trying to educate. If we see something that needs to be out there, we really try to lead in that way.
Well, Jay, on behalf of my team at Tag Cyber and all the folks who are watching, I want to thank you for taking some time. Such interesting tech, and I hope you guys continue to see lots of success.
Thank you, Ed, very much, and thank you everyone for listening. Look forward to hearing from you. Take care.
And for everyone else, we'll see you all next time.